It was December 24th on Hollis Ave after dark when I seen a man chilling with his dog in a park. I approached him very slowly with my heart full of fear. I looked at his dog. Oh my God, a ill reindeer. But then I was illin' cause a man had a beer and a bag full of goodies 12 o'clock had near. So I turned my head a second and the man was gone. But he must have dropped his wallet smack dead on the lawn. I picked the wallet up, but then I took a pause, took out the license and the code said Santa Claus. $1 million in it, cold hundreds of G's, enough to buy a Bodemetric car with ease. But I never steal from Santa, cause that ain't right. So I'm going home to mail it back to him that night. But when I got home, I bugged, cause under the tree was a letter from Santa and the dough was for me. Welcome to Sup Media Reviews, the podcast that never needs spoiler alerts because it takes you back in time to relive the nostalgia of classic TV shows and films that you've probably already seen. I'm your host, Kiara, and each week I'll dive into the archives to bring you my take on movies and TV shows from at least 20 years ago. From cult classics to forgotten gems, I'll review them all and give my honest opinion on their impact and whether or not they still hold up today. Join me as we revisit the iconic characters, memorable moments, and timeless themes that made these shows and films so special. So take a break from adulting and get ready for a trip down memory lane with Sup Media Reviews. What's up, Home Slices? Thanks so much for tuning into Sup Media Reviews. I'm Kiara, and I'm stoked to review the 1988 action film that has us all asking, is it a Christmas movie? Today we're diving into Die Hard, featuring Bruce Willis as John McClane, Alan Rickman as Hans Gruber, aka Professor Snape, and Reginald VelJohnson as Sergeant Al Powell, aka Carl Winslow. The movie is based on the 1979 novel Nothing Lasts Forever by Roderick Thorpe. Last year, everyone in my house watched all the Die Hard movies in order, but before then I had never seen them. And since I have limited experience with this movie, I figured I'd need a little help digging into this classic. So I invited my dad to join me. Say hi, Dad.
Hey, Holmes Isis, what's happening?
You may remember Dad from the reviews of Friday the 13th and Halloween. I'm really excited to have him here to share his perspective on this action film. So here are a few fun facts about the movie. The costume department had 17 undershirts in various stages of degradation on hand for Bruce Willis. In 2007, Bruce Willis donated John McClane's undershirt to the Smithsonian Museum.
Cool. That was pretty cool about the t-shirt. What they call wife beaters, if you want to call it.
Oh, God.
The worst name for it.
Awful name. Yes.
But that is the colloquial name, I guess you want to say. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's kind of cool because it's kind of iconic. That'd be a cool costume if you'd have to be. There's some stuff to go with that costume. Or some things you leave off without getting into too much.
Yeah, that's true. Would you be barefoot too? I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. I didn't want to give that away yet. But I guess you would be. Your feet would be all, Anyway, let's go.
Yeah.
That's a good part of the story.
Okay, well, the second fun fact is that Alan Rickman, who plays Hans Gruber, nearly passed up on the role, which ended up being his first film role. He had only arrived in Hollywood 2 days earlier and was appalled by the idea of his first role being the villain in an action film. To a degree, Rickman was right to be concerned, considering his performance as Hans Gruber was so hailed that the actor had to struggle being typecast as a player of villains for much of his career.
Yep. He had to be on Broadway, or not Broadway, but British theater or something, He came in and he smashed it too hard to be like just some new guy showing up in Hollywood.
Yeah. I had read that it was either the writers or directors that actually saw him in a play playing a villain. And they were like, okay, this is Hans Gruber. So they got to experience him doing like a live performance. And of course, I know him as a millennial as Professor Snape. But I also know Alan Rickman as, did you ever watch Something the Lord Made?
Yes, with Mos Def.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So he was in that too. And his voice is really distinct to me. Mm-hmm. His voice has this really good like quality to it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he passed away last year.
Alan Rickman did?
Or the year before? He did.
I think so. I think I might remember that. Yeah.
So yeah, for us millennials, he's, Harry Potter's Professor Snape. Mm-hmm. But for others, he's Hans Gruber, among other things.
Yeah, he's played, I was telling Kiara, Raby, your sister, and them, about Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. He played Sheriff of Nottingham.
Oh, okay.
Which is the villain. Got some classic lines in that. He played like, he stole the movie kind of, because the rest of the movie is just a rom-com with him and, I forgot to lead it, with Kevin Costner as Robin Hood. And I can't remember who played Maid Marian. Was that the heroine? Yeah. And he kind of stole the movie. Alan Rickman playing Sheriff of Nottingham. There's a line, and I wouldn't recommend doing a movie so it's a little cheesy, but he's got a line that Robin Hood comes in and saves the day and makes him look bad. So he gets back in his castle, whatever, and he's telling his staff and everybody, that's it. Raise taxes, hang the guys in the gallows, and cancel Christmas. He was ranting. And so it was just, he was good. He had several lines in that where he was just playing a great villain.
Yeah.
And he actually had, this was the thing about the movie, he actually could use his accent. But for some reason, I don't think Kevin Costner had an accent in it. They were in England. I'm trying to remember the movie. Had a great soundtrack. The soundtrack did great. Everything I do it for you. You've heard the song. And it did great. And there was a couple other things. But yeah, if you ever find a clip thing of him, and I'm sure there's something out here with Alan Rickman lines or so. But yeah, he'd played probably a great villain in the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. Fantastic actor. Mm-hmm. The third fun fact is, ironically, Bruce Willis in this movie is kind of sneered at for being an all-American hero by Hans Gruber, but Bruce Willis is actually more German than most of the villains in the film. Alan Rickman was English. Mm-hmm. Alexander Godunov, who I think played Carl, was Russian, but Bruce Willis was born on March 19th, 1955 in West Germany to an American father and a German mother.
Wow.
So
cool.
He's like the most German person in the movie.
Yeah.
If you want to check out Die Hard, you can watch it on Hulu or Tubi as of the recording of this episode. So this is the point where we talk a little bit about our personal connections to the film. Dad, what is your connection to this film? Did you see it in movie theaters? Why do you think it's such a classic?
I didn't see it in the theater. I remember it had like Bruce Willis at the time was not a star. He had a TV show, and this propelled him into superstardom. And it was like, everybody was like, oh my God, I would hear people say, did you see it? Did you, it got a lot of buzz on the streets, as you want to say. But it came out 88. I was in the Army just getting in the Army. So I didn't see it till probably 89 on video. But it's one of those in the Army barracks classics. You put it on, you're going to have a room full of guys, girls stood watching it. And, everybody will sit down and watch part of it or something. But that's my connection. And it's a guy movie, but there's some heartfelt stuff in here that woman would like, and Erica liked. My wife watched it with me, and she enjoyed it. So, and she remembers it from back in the day. But my connection is, like most of these movies, it's with some guys, that once I was in the Army, it was a good time.
Okay, nice. Well, like I said earlier, I had never seen this movie up until last year, so I don't have a real strong connection to it. But I will acknowledge that it's a big part of popular culture. Oh, yeah. It's a big part of kind of action movie history. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's a big part of Bruce Willis's legacy as the original Jason Statham.
Yeah. Okay. Just an action star. When there was Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone in the early 80s to the 90s, Bruce Willis came in with this and was able to get his, it put him up there with them as far as an action star.
Yeah, and after I watched this movie, I understood a lot more references from other shows and things. And I'm like, oh, that's where that came from.
Right. Yes.
And I also understood the hype behind it. But I will also add that Bruce Willis, to me, comes off as like more of a regular type of guy.
Right.
And he makes the movie more relatable as opposed to like action stars like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah,
he wasn't buff. He wasn't real tall.
Right. Or Sylvester Stallone.
He was always balding. He always was balding. Because there was a TV show before that's called Moonlighting. And it was him and a woman whose name was Sybil Shepherd, blonde woman. And I can't remember the premise. Was he a private eye or she was a private eye and he was helping her? And he was a wisecracking cop or a private eye or something. He was pretty funny in it. But it was like an hour-long show. It did pretty good, but that's where I first saw him. And he just popped on the scene then. And so like I said, he's more relatable they show him as a dad and a husband / ex-husband in this. Yeah, I get you on that.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool. He just came off as like a regular guy who's, was more attainable than an Arnold or,
Right.
or, Sylvester.
Right. There's some, especially Arnold, there's some movies where the opening scene is him just being huge. It's just, okay, we're going to show you how huge he is, and then we're going to go from there. And then I used to be like, okay, thank you. I mean, he's huge.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I'm excited for us to talk about this movie, so let's get into it.
All right.
All right. So it's the opening scene of the movie, and on Christmas Eve, New York City Police Department Detective John McClane arrives in Los Angeles, hoping to reconcile with his estranged wife, Holly, at a party held by her employer, the Nakatomi Corporation. There are a few things about this film that let you know it's from a different time period. John McClane is on a plane with a gun. And also, we flip over to the holiday party, and a pregnant lady is asking if it's okay to have an alcoholic beverage. Did you catch that?
Yeah, I was like, I heard that. I was like, maybe she was joking, but I don't know. That was a little weird.
It was. Yeah. But I do want to point out that while we, get a glimpse of this holiday party, there is a young man there named Ellis who is flirting with Holly at work. It seems that he knows that her marriage is going through a hard time.
Yeah. And
he comes back a little bit later. We also see that John and Holly have 2 children and that she isn't referring to John as her husband anymore. Right. So we're able
now
to
we got to go back a little bit. All right. So he goes to when he gets off the plane, he's got a limo driver.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, they're struggling in their marriage. That's a big part of the kind of like background exposition of what's happening in this film. We also see, I don't know if you picked up on this, Dad, that John is having a hard time keeping his eyes to himself when it comes to multiple ladies in the opening scene of this movie. There's like some weird eye contact he makes with the flight attendant.
Yeah. Well, I think what some of this is the California, they're doing the New York, California thing. And he kind of alludes to that later on. Where he goes, oh, yeah. And he's going to the airport and I think that's the point they were trying to make. I don't know if he was being just checking out the ladies, but I think they wanted to show the California difference or something, or show him he's from New York. He's not used to, I don't say beautiful women, but, California women.
That's an interesting take.
Yeah.
Okay. So John at this point is driven to Nakatomi Plaza by a limo driver named Argyle, a young, talkative black man. And during the ride to the plaza, we find out that the limo is decked out with the latest technology in 1988, and that he still lives in New York City despite his family now living LA.
Right.
He claims that his job as a cop in New York is what's keeping him in New York, but Argyle kind of calls his bluff and is like, you didn't expect Holly to do as well as she's doing right now, and you thought she would come crawling back to you.
Yeah, and he cops to it basically. Yeah, Argyle. I don't know if this movie started it, but an action movie, he didn't start it, but you usually have comic relief kind of guy, a fast talk, and usually it's somebody of some other ethnicity, black or Asian. If you think back to Indiana Jones, they had a little Asian kid and a fast talking kid or some kind of comic relief. And this guy he was it. He wasn't a movie a lot, but he had his parts. And I always liked this kid as an actor. I thought I would see him later. But I've never seen him again. If he's grown up and looked different. But yeah, there's always somebody that's, going to be having you laughing. You have a character like that.
Yeah, I liked his character a lot as well. Also, during this drive, the limo driver plays Christmas in Hollis by Run DMC.
Yeah.
Which
Fantastic.
I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah, that was pretty good. They're making it a point to know that it's Christmas time, which you don't really know until we get to the building. I don't think was there anything else before that indicated it was Christmas time? Well, they might have said it when they were talking for the holidays or something.
I feel like at this point we know it's a holiday party.
Yeah.
Based on maybe the decor at the party.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying before he's still in the car and we did see that's right. We did see a scene from that. Okay, I got you. But they make a point to let you know. And I think a lot of this probably comes from the book because it all blends really well. You're like, okay, this is a fantastic story and how it comes together.
Yeah, the story is actually very good.
Yeah.
Okay, as Argyle drops John off, he offers to wait for McClane in the garage and make arrangements for him based on if he's able to reconcile with Holly or not. So that's some good customer service.
Right.
Argyle gives John the number to the car phone in the car. I don't know why car phones are so funny to me.
Your grandmother had one, and looked like it was like a little satchel. And that Mercedes your grandmother had, she had a little car phone profile. And you had to carry it around. It felt like you carrying around a bomb. It was big enough to be. It was weird.
A suspicious briefcase.
Right. It wasn't huge, but it was big enough to be somebody. If you brought it out right now and you kept it closed, and like, what is that? And they would not guess a phone. Nobody would be able to guess there's a phone in there. You can just think it looked like, what do you call that thing you use for snoring? What is that? Something you would put.
Oh, CPAP.
Yeah, it looked like a CPAP case or something like that when it's sealed up. But yeah.
That's interesting because I have so many questions about car phones. We don't have to get into it now, but it's like, you had to pay for an additional line of service. How was it powered? Did you charge it?
The one Grandma had was a cell phone. It was a cell phone, but it was a thing. It was kind of big, and you plugged it in the car, and then it was expensive. She didn't keep it long. She didn't keep it up long, but like something like that in a limo, I don't know how they did that. And you had to have the capability to transmit and receive, so it must have been special antenna. But all the other stuff in the limo cracked me up too. He said, I've got VHS, I've got a bar, and I got it. Yeah, dude, it's a limo. It's supposed to have all that. But yeah, it was good to see the throwback stuff in there. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought that was nice. Well, the Nakatomi Plaza is a nice office building that's partially under construction and is where basically everything in this movie happens. So I found out that at the time of filming, the building was actually the headquarters of 20th Century Studios. So the studio could use one of its own buildings and didn't have to hold back on stunts and action sequences. I also read that they had to do most of the filming at night because the employees of 20th Century Studios were complaining about the noise. And it's like, yeah, y'all but this is a workplace.
Right. In your movie studio, okay. Hilarious.
Yes. So at this point in the story, McClane tries to get settled in at the holiday party, and we can tell that he feels a little bit out of place and upset. And this is partially due to the fact that he realizes that his wife is not going by her married name. Mm-hmm. She's using her maiden name, Gennaro, which comes back a lot in this movie.
Yeah. We
also feel like he doesn't kind of fit into the corporate setting.
Of course not. And that's not the theme, but that's not a fish out of water, but he's just out of place, and they're corporate and proper, and he's like, hey, let's just get this done. He's not, he wasn't an a-hole about it, but he was, yeah, when he gets to the building, though, they make it a point. Did you like the technology?
Yes, the directory.
Yes, that was pretty hilarious. I hadn't seen it in a while, especially from the beginning. When I saw it, I said, oh, wow, that is hilarious. But when we saw it back in 88, 89, I was like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. And also, by the time John gets there, people have already had too much to drink.
Right.
The
party
is way in effect.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So John eventually gets greeted by Mr. Katagi, who is Holly's boss. Mm-hmm. And when he takes John to Holly's office, they find Ellis, the guy who has a little crush on Holly, doing coke on Holly's desk.
Right.
And I'm like, what the heck is this?
Just like you have a comic relief guy, you already got to have a jerk in the office that everybody's got to hate. But it's not a villain. But everybody kind of is like, look at this jerk. And he's, so
he's cannon fodder.
Right. So, yeah, I had forgot how much of a pain in the butt this guy was. But yeah.
Yeah. I was like, whoa. And Mr. Takagi kind of like low key is like, hey, this is Holly's policeman.
Yeah. Coke sniffing dummy.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. But suddenly Holly comes into her office and we can see and feel the tension that they have, which is only made worse by Ellis being a condescending butthole to John.
Right.
Pointing out like, oh, Holly's doing so well here. She did so well that she has a Rolex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Talk about the wine.
He would
be
able to afford that.
Right.
Yeah. He was being a butthole about that.
Yeah.
Briefly, John and Holly talk while he's changing clothes so he can get into something more appropriate for the party. And you can tell that they still love and miss each other. She invites him to stay over at the house with her and the kids. And, for a small moment, it looks like there's hope for them until John brings up her last name and using her maiden name, and they start arguing again.
Right.
I want to point out how awful the decor is in this little room.
Yeah.
So back in the day, people had big offices with bathrooms attached, and that may still exist somewhere, but I work in a corporate environment, and it's very much like everyone has a desk in an open space. People rarely have offices, and when they do, they're actually pretty small, and it's more about like collaboration and being able to walk up and talk to people. And so like the offices are not big like that, and like no one has their own bathroom anymore.
Yeah, this was the 80s, and big was the thing. Have you at the corner office with a great view and your private bathroom, and and you have separate spots for snipping coke off the table.
Why would he do that in Holly's office? I'm sure he had his own office.
Right, just being a douche, I guess. I don't.
But yeah, the bathroom and office area where Holly and John were arguing had the most awful gold wallpaper everywhere. There was carpet in the bathroom.
I think they were trying to show this is a company that's doing well, all the trappings of the financial success, and they were all. And you remember they said it's a celebration because they've had a great year,
right?
And they've landed this, they've done that, and you can see they're celebrating. Everybody is like, "Hey, we're doing great. We're killing it," and you know, they were enjoying themselves. So, and it kind of builds up to be, you know, oh, you're going to get taken down a notch, you know, you know what I mean? It's going to go down, and you're going to be, you know, not put back in your place, but you're going to be knocked down a few pegs.
Right. So eventually Holly gets whisked away during this, you know, disagreement. And in a separate scene, we see a large delivery truck and a Mercedes pull up to the plaza. The guys in the Mercedes killed the security officer at the front desk quite easily. And the dudes in the delivery truck get the signal to move. I do want to point out that I will call this group basically the henchmen throughout.
The henchmen. Okay.
Throughout this.
Because they're not terrorists. They're not just, you know, technically, but I get henchmen is cool. I like that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the music is iconic too. As soon as the truck comes is when the movie sound, the score comes in. And it's, when you hear that, you know, oh, that's Die Hard. Yeah. It has that military, but them, you know, coming in. And so that you probably heard that somewhere. Somebody probably used it to show something. And you probably
are you talking about dun, 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 dun,
no, not an actual song. Okay. No, that's later. Okay, but the actual score, the actual, I don't know who the music guy was, but whoever did it was known, and this is his sound. I just know the sound, but it was cool. And like with horror movies also, you know, something's going to happen. Here come the guys. Here come the bad guys. So I always thought that was right on time, and it was a good way to bring them in. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good foreboding music. Right. But, so I want to point out also that one of the henchmen in the Mercedes is a black man named Theo. He's played by Clarence Gilliard Jr., who I recognize as Trevette from Walker, Texas Ranger. That's where I knew his face, and that's the same time period. That's around the same. Okay, that's about right. Yeah. Okay, that's where he's from. Was he like the? He was also in Top Gun, but in Walker, he was his partner. Okay, that's right. Yes. Okay. I knew I had seen him, and I didn't like him in that either. But anyway. So my great-grandfather loved Walker, Texas Ranger. So I watched it so often when I was at his house as a child. I watched it a little bit as an adult, like maybe one episode. And I was like, this is awful. It was bad. I didn't like it back then. I was like, this is going in. But yeah, when I looked him up, I found out that he died last year, almost like to this day, as of the day of this recording. Oh, really? I didn't realize that he had passed away. 67, 66. Okay. Yeah. So I didn't know he had passed. But yeah, I remember seeing him a lot as a kid. He was so unlikable in this movie. Oh, he was so unlikable. Yeah. I hated him from the beginning. I was like, oh, I don't like this guy. Yeah. I know he's one of the villains, but I liked Hans Gruber, you know what I mean? But I just didn't like this guy. Yeah, there was something about him that was like almost a little too silly. Right. And that's part of it. Yeah. 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 But yeah, long story short, the tower ends up getting seized by a German radical named Hans Gruber, played by Alan Rickman, and his heavily armed team. They're probably 12-ish of them, I think. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. That's the number they said. Everyone in the tower is taking hostage except for McClane, who ends up managing to slip away because he was in that office getting dressed. Right. And I didn't realize how important it was that he was getting dressed because it explains why throughout the movie he is shoeless. Right. And shirtless. Right. Yeah. So and that becomes a whole theme. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Oh, and also Argyle
he's still there, but he's kind of oblivious because he's in the parking garage enjoying all of the amenities in the limo.
Right. So they do a good job of keeping him, as soon as you forget about him, they throw him in there. He's on the phone talking to a girl, and then he's, eating or watching a movie or something. And they keep throwing you, and it makes sense that he's still there because he's got a key point later in the film. Now, I want to talk about the henchman a little bit. You already touched on the guy from Walker. What was his name in the show?
In the movie, his name is Theo.
Theo, yeah. Him. And then you got Hans Gruber, who Alan Rickman, we talked about him. Now, there is the long-haired Carl. He plays in a movie with Tom Hanks and Shelley Long. One of my favorite comedies is about them building a house. And I'm blanking on the name of The Money Pit.
Okay.
And he plays an orchestra conductor.
Okay.
And Shelley Long is a violinist or something. And he plays her ex-boyfriend, and he's funny in that. And he has this accent. So it was weird. I think Punishment came out for to see him. And then you see him, he came in a lot of 90s movies as, he can't hide his accent. So he's usually playing some kind of action henchman or something. And then there's an Asian guy with the long hair.
Okay.
He was a staple throughout the 80s and 90s of being in movies where they're either getting killed or doing some karate moves. So he was typecast, that guy. And then there's a guy, this is strictly for the people that might be listening, that are my age, if they are. The guy that takes the place of the front desk guy. Remember, he puts on the jacket and everything. There's an artist called Huey Lewis. There's a band called Huey Lewis in the News. He looks like him, and it always bothered me. I said, that's how can a henchman look like Huey Lewis? And so every time I see him, I was like, and that's what Huey Lewis is about to get it. I don't remember his name, so I just meant it. And there's a couple other henchmen that threw me off. Some of them were accented, and then there's some was like, one guy was like a Italian mob guy talking. I'm like, I said, this is a strange group of guys.
It is.
But I guess maybe maybe he was able to get them together by promise of big money,
Yeah.
But it was a strange group of guys. But for the most part, most of them were German, is what we figure out.
Yes. All of them are pretty menacing. Most of them are over 6 feet tall. Another fun fact about the movie.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, but I think to summarize what's going on in the hostage situation, it kind of boils down to a couple of things for me. It turns out that Theo is the tech guy of the operation.
Right. And usually on these heist movies and stuff like this, there's a specialty guy that does stuff like this. And I want to say this movie is one of the early ones that say each guy's got to have a job, and one guy's the explosive guy, one guy's the machine gun expert, and one guy's the leader, and one guy's the tech guy, and one guy's, they all have, one guy's the funny guy. Even though there weren't too many funny guys in this group. they were all pretty serious. Or pretty, what do you want to call, heavies, I guess you can call them. Yeah.
Well, he's using computers to secure the building, to limit the elevator service. And I want to point out that it's really nice to see a black henchman as the smart, technically proficient one. I feel like typically black henchmen in movies are mostly muscle. Yeah. So to see a criminal nerd who's black is it's a little groundbreaking for me personally.
Yeah, it was the original role.
Yeah.
But they made him so unlikable to me that I glossed over the fact that I knew he was a black guy, but I wasn't like impressed. I was like, he's a jerk. I don't like him. But I see what you're saying. Yeah, that usually black guys, it's just a big guy in the background doing something. It's physical. I get it.
Yeah. He was actually probably the most important person to the actual task that, was assigned. Yeah. Right. And so, like you said earlier, there's a Huey Lewis looking henchman posted as a security guard at the front desk. And it looks like they are running a pretty tight operation under Hans's leadership. And they cut the phone lines and everything. So they jam signals. People aren't able to get any real communication out.
Yeah.
So they end up entering the party, guns blazing, and they round people up. And basically this Christmas party is the only people who are left in the building. Everyone else it's Christmas Eve. Everybody else has gone home and the building is partially under construction. So it's not like it's full anyway. So yeah, earlier in the film, when John is on the plane, he's giving advice about balling his toes into fists to relieve his nerves from flying. And that's why when he's getting changed for the party, he doesn't have any shoes on at that point, because he's doing that little tip from the guy he talked to on the plane.
Oh, okay. Okay. I didn't realize. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, like I said, McClane escapes to another floor right before the henchmen start checking out the office where he was, and he's trying to find a way to call for help. He's also able to peep what Gruber's team is working with in terms of manpower and weapons. So he sees that like they're well equipped, they have like missiles and stuff. Like
they make it a point to show us it says missile on one of those containers. So and it has a lot of bearing on stuff later.
Right. So he's like, he understands what type of manpower they have and how many weapons they have and like how serious the situation is. And so as the story moves along, we see that Hans Gruber is basically posing as a terrorist. He claims that he wants to demonstrate the real use of power to the greedy Nakatomi Corporation. And when Gruber whisks Takagi, the boss, away, we find out that he actually really wants the code key from Takagi to seal the $640 million in untraceable bearer bonds from the building's vault. So to everyone else, he's there, you know, as a terrorist fighting some, you know, for some cause or whatever. But he's actually just like trying to steal some money. Yeah. And we find out the significance of that later, which I didn't realize from the last time I watched.
Yeah.
John is nearby watching as Gruber is, you know, grilling Takagi. And Gruber gives Takagi a chance to give him the code. And it doesn't work. And so he ends up shooting Takagi in the head. The effects on that were actually really good.
Yeah.
And pretty startling. But Hans tasks Theo with breaking into the vault without the codes, which we find out has 7 safeguards and will take about 3 hours to break into, except for the 7th lock, which is the most difficult one. But Hans has a plan to take care of the 7th lock, and we find that out later. So John pulls the fire alarm to try to get some help to the building, but it also alerts the terrorists to the fact that there's somebody else here in this building. So a henchman named Tony is sent to find him because they're able to tell which floor the fire alarm came from. And McClane and Tony fight. What do you think about the fight scenes in this movie? I guess this one in particular.
They were pretty good. And it made it like he wasn't like a fighting expert, you know. And like we said before, he's not a huge guy full of muscles. But I thought it was realistic enough that you're fighting for your life. So it's not straight karate moves and and kicks. They were struggling with each other. A lot of in close and pretty graphic. And I thought the overall fight scenes were pretty good. Yeah,
I think so too. They did come across as realistic. And even though he's just like a regular guy, he is still a cop. So he still has, you know, that level.
Some kind of skills.
Yeah, those level of skills. So
of grabbing people that want to be grabbed, you know, so people are resisting.
So at the end of this scene, McClane and Tony kind of fall down the stairs and Tony like breaks his neck, basically is dead. So that is important later, but he ends up taking Tony's weapon and radio. And a weird scene, he kind of sends the dead Tony to Gruber's special delivery via the elevator. Wearing a sweater that has a note on it. And it says, "Now I have a machine gun, ho, ho, ho." I thought that was a little weird and kind of funny.
It was definitely funny. But I thought, once I watched it again, it's like, he didn't have to do that.
He did.
I mean, he still could have been, because they didn't know exactly about him. But I guess he could have still kind of held something back to know how, you know, once they've seen he was killed one of their guys, maybe he was like, okay, this is showing I'm nothing to play with either. But as it really turns out, Tony is significant. I think that's why they had to do it for the movie, to see why Carl is a little upset about Tony getting killed.
Because later we find out that Tony was the brother of another henchman named Carl, who has like kind of long blonde hair, who's instructed to wait before finding McClane. Hans recognizes that like Carl is,
and he's like the number 2 behind Hans.
But he's like, we have a goal here. Like, we're playing the long game. We got to be in this building for at least 3 hours so Theo can get through the vaults. Like, you can't go guns blazing right now. We have to focus. So at this point in the story, Theo has actually breached the first lock in the vault. But in a brief exchange between Holly and Ellis feels like John may be jeopardizing the survival of the group because Holly rightfully assumes that it was John who killed Tony.
She kind of mentions that to, what's his name?
Ellis.
Ellis, that's his name.
Yeah, and this is going to come back later. But John uses the radio to contact the skeptical Los Angeles Police Department.
Right.
And when Hans hears the radio traffic, 3 henchmen are sent to the roof where John is transmitting. He had to go to the roof because they were jamming signals and stuff, I guess. Or that's where he figured, because later on...
Well, then that where the best place to transmit. The higher up you are with the radio, the farther you'll get with your radio transmission. So in case the building interfered with it, that's why he went up there.
Yeah.
I don't think they were jamming. Because nobody has cell phones and nobody has nothing then. So...
That's interesting, because I saw them put a jammer on something. What were they jamming? Because they cut the phone lines.
Yeah. I don't know what a jammer looks like.
There was something that I presumed to be a jammer or something, because I think they literally said something about jamming something.
Okay, I missed that. I just thought he was okay.
Yeah, but
I thought it was all explosives that they were playing. Every time they put something down, that's going to explode later. That's going to explode later. Yeah.
Maybe it was. I don't know. Yeah. But I think I did forget to mention that the henchmen were like doing bombs all around the building as well.
Yeah, and they do a great. Like I say, this is great storytelling. That's why it had to be from a book, because it was detailed about where they're putting stuff up, but they're not telling you exactly what's going on. Mm-hmm. But it's clear later what's going to happen, but you're still in the dark. I said, you're just thinking, well, I guess they're going to blow the building up, but it's more detailed than that, and it's. He said, fantastic story.
Yeah, I agree. So eventually Sergeant Al Powell, played by Reginald VelJohnson, is sent to investigate after he stocks up on an ungodly number of snack cakes for his pregnant wife. Sure.
Right. Yeah, sure. That's what the clerk at the store was like, yeah, right. Yes. You're a cop. You're getting snack cakes. Yeah.
Yes. They were Twinkies, but they had something else on them. Was it like seeds or something?
I thought they were tasty cakes with the yellow icing on the top. And I don't know what they were called.
They look like Twinkies to me. The ones with the yellow icing on the top, I haven't had them in a long time.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, though. Yeah, that's what I thought they were.
Yeah, but I do want to point out that I used to be a police dispatcher, and those dispatchers were way too cavalier.
Right.
Like, even when they heard the gunshots, they were like, send somebody down there. And it's like, you heard the gunshots.
Yes.
That didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they were trying to show, like, he's the hero. You need to listen to him, and you don't listen to him, bad things happen, and bad things did happen. Or it could be it's LA, there's gunshots everywhere.
That's right. Yeah, I was like, look, I don't really buy into like the East Coast, West Coast. The East Coast, West Coast beef. But I don't think that the dispatchers in LA would just be so chill to disregard gunshots.
Yeah, basically that's what they do something. So he's going to be, and hence later he goes off and it's funny, and it's so he's the hero.
Yeah. Meanwhile, McClane is running from the henchmen on the roof, in the elevator shafts, and the air ducts. We see some suspenseful moments where he almost falls. The elevator shaft is like a lot in this movie. A lot in this movie. We see him almost fall to his death in the elevator shaft, but he manages to get out. I heard that him falling in the elevator shaft was actually an accident from one of the stuntmen.
Oh, yeah.
He wasn't supposed to fall.
Oh, wow.
But they ended up keeping it in the movie. But then we get the iconic scene. Movie. Yeah, I will say the stunts are pretty good. His stunt double, McClane's stunt double, is kind of okay in the film. It's okay. Like, you can tell the difference. Right. But it's not super glaring.
Right, yeah. There was a couple of times where I said, yeah, here he is. But most times I didn't notice it.
Mm-hmm. But we get to see the iconic scene where he's in the air ducts and he uses the lighter to kind of, show the way. Yeah. Which also means that he took a lighter on a Los Angeles flight, on his flight to Los Angeles. Yeah. Yeah. But,
remember, he got the lighter from the guy. Remember?
Which guy?
One of the guys he kills, he gets the lighter.
Oh, okay. I didn't pick that up. I thought that was his.
He got the lighter. He got the lighter from the guy. And I remember that because he uses it a couple times. When he's smoking, he's smoking cigarettes for runaway. Because remember, he gets the cigarettes from the guy, and he says something. He goes, "Oh, at least these guys, the good taste in cigarettes are Europeans, or we always have cigarettes or something." So
I think that's later.
Is it later?
When he gets the cigarettes.
Okay.
I don't know where he got the lighter from.
Yeah.
But he had it on him, and he, uses it so he can see in the air ducts, and he says the iconic line, "Come out to the coast, we'll get together, have a few laughs."
Yeah.
At this point in the movie, I recognize that a lot of things he says in this movie is done in this weird kind of sing-songy voice.
Yeah.
A little bit.
That's a thing of his. He did that in that moonlighting show. Like I said, he was really snarky in that show, but he was pretty funny. And his other movies, not the Die Hard franchise, but his other movies, he does stuff like that, but it's part of his appeal. And he was, he had like one-liners. He can deliver them better than Arnold and Sylvester,
Oh, yeah. Because they sound awful.
Right. So, but I noticed also I didn't realize it, with the lighter, that's how the guy, when he looked down the elevator shaft, he didn't know where he was, and he hit the lighter, and he shows the little light coming from the air duct. I said, for a while, I was like, how do you keep finding him, in this big building?
Yeah.
But I said, they're smart, and then, there was clues. So that's another thing. These details can only come from a book. And I would think a good director and a good crew would be able to like, all right, that doesn't make sense. They just keep finding him. Let's make sure they get these details in the story flow and make it. Of course, it's unbelievable. But it's a story. But you got to make sense somehow. Yeah.
Right. I noticed that as well. And I was like, oh, that's how they found him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when Sergeant Powell, who is a bad driver, gets to the building, he talks to the fake security guard, but he doesn't really find anything suspicious, and he's low key over it. He's like, it's Christmas Eve. I want to go home. Right. He actually was on his way home when he got this call. So in the meantime, McClane ends up killing 2 more henchmen. And that's when he finds the cigarettes, I believe.
Okay.
But Powell is getting ready to leave the plaza until McClane, who's been trying to get the cops' attention, throws a henchman out of the window onto his police car. And so Powell, who's freaking out, is like backing up kind of erratically. The terrorists are shooting at him as he tries to get to safety. And he's able to request backup on the radio right before he has a pretty serious accident. He like backs his car
and it goes down that
off of a ledge. Yeah.
I said, this was one of the best choreographed action movies that came along. And we were like, oh, wow, that's pretty good. And the fact you said they were shooting at him. Okay. Wasn't just a guy with a gun shooting. There was a guy in a window with a big machine gun, which is an M60, it looked like. And I know that from the military, and that could do some damage. So he was panicking back. I think he did a great job. I got getting killed here. But that was when he goes over that, it's not a cliff, but it's just an embankment. I don't know what you would call it.
A big ledge, maybe 8 feet, 8 to 10 feet or something.
Yeah, I know I had to hurt. As far as even the stuntman or whoever.
Yeah. But Powell, of course, is a little injured from this. But we learn at this point that Hans actually expected the police and needs them to carry out his plan. But just then, John calls Hans on the radio and taunts him while he recovers their bag of C4 and detonators. So did you have any thoughts on the kills in this movie? Are not necessarily that notable to me, but with the one with him being under the table was kind of funny to me. Yeah,
that was funny.
Yeah.
And there was the guy was talking junk on top of it. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Just shoot the whole table. I thought that was a little ridiculous. I mean, and he ends up shooting him through the table. So I'm like, you got a smaller gun. What do you just deserve to die. You're a dumb henchman. So But the one thing you noticed when you said that Powell got hurt. So you remember they were, he was bleeding a little bit from the head, but then it disappears. It disappeared later. I was like,
I'm assuming he wipes it off.
But I mean, he would still have a,
No, that's right. No, that's right. Because when backup comes, one of the police officers wipes it off.
Right. But
he starts administering first aid.
But he get a bandage or would keep bleeding or something. I was like,
that's true.
Yeah, I said, oh, well. But yeah.
Maybe he has a clotting disorder.
Okay. But yeah, the kills were, stuff he does with the bodies was funny to me. Just throwing them out the window, put them in an elevator. It was just kind of funny to me. Yeah.
But Hans and John have that conversation on the radio, and he actually recovers a bag of C4 and detonators off of one of the henchmen that he killed. And he also grabbed the cigarettes at this point.
Okay.
By now, John's tank top is completely brown and disgusting.
Yes.
I kept looking at like the degradation of the of the tank top as time goes on, and I'm like, this is awful.
What bothered me more than he was just covered in dirt. That bothered me. His bare arms and stuff. I was like, that's gotta, but that's part of the thing. He's in it. He's got no time to worry about no dirt or no shoes, no.
So that's the other problem I had with the movie. The first person he killed was Tony, and Tony had small feet, right? So he couldn't take Tony's shoes. He killed 2 more henchmen. Yeah. Why didn't he try to take their shoes?
I know some of them there was no time because there was more henchmen afoot. You know what I mean? There was more of them around. But That's another thing. He never did try to get no more shoes. But I just thought most of them, there just was no time for him to try to do that.
I mean, he was sitting around having a conversation with Hans. He could have grabbed a shoe real quick when he grabbed the C4. I
think his thing was, if I can't grab it quick, because I've just shot a guy, that means more henchmen are coming. I need to get out of this area. Mm-hmm. I just think like a lot of this, when rewatching it, I would like to read the book just to see, how it came together. And maybe some of these details will be, explained in the book.
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah.
But during this conversation with Hans and John mentions how he loved Roy Rogers. Mm-hmm. And I had to look that up.
Yeah, I know the name, and I know he was a cowboy in movies and all that.
Right. So. Right. So, yeah, he was a cowboy in movies. And at this point, he also says the other iconic line from the movie, Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And I'm like, yes. Classic.
It's hilarious.
Yeah. Classic.
Yeah.
He's got a way of delivering. Mm-hmm. And I was reading something the other day. There's a line in this movie that was improvised. I don't think it was that one. I'd have to go back and find it. But I think he improvised a couple of lines here. But
yeah, I read that a number of lines were improvised in this movie. There's a reason for that, but it's not coming to mind right now. In a weird side story in this movie, a reporter named Richard Thornburg is listening to the police scanner and hears about the shots fired at the Nakatomi Plaza. He appears to not be well respected or liked by the other people at the news station.
Yeah.
But he's requesting for them to send a news crew down to the plaza to report on it. But eventually, Thornburg, who is played by William Atherton, who you might remember from Ghostbusters, gets permission to take a news truck. I feel like this man plays bad guys often. Not
just bad guys, but also very unlikable.
Yeah.
Sleazeball type of thing.
Yeah.
There's a movie I love him in, and he plays he's not a villain, it's in a comedy. Is it Real Genius? It's an 80s, Real Genius. Professor Jerry Hathaway. I'm looking it up now. It's a fun 80s movie that he's in, and that came out in 85. So yeah, he plays a real jerk in that, and he's really unlikable, and he's almost the same character.
Okay.
Yeah. So and I'm sure there's other stuff. I'm looking him up. Oh boy, he was in some heavyweight movies too. But yeah, he's very unlikable.
Yes, he is. He finally does get permission to take a news truck down to the plaza. And by this time, Theo has actually broken through 3 of 7 locks in the safe. So John and Powell start having this open conversation over the radio where John gives Sergeant Powell the lowdown on Hans's crew. There are 9 of them left. Hans is eager to get the detonators back from John at this point. And so a SWAT team and Powell's boss named Chief Robinson arrives. And Robinson questions if McClane, who at this point is going by Roy, can be trusted. Right. But Powell's instincts tells him that he can. Robinson is like a real butt in this movie.
Right.
However, he does make a few good points about we don't know if McClane is one of the terrorists just playing games with us. But Powell, like I said, his instincts are no, I think I can trust this guy. And he also is under the impression that he's a cop based on some of the things that he said. So already there's this power struggle between Powell and...
Now, Chief Robinson is famous for movie being the teacher in The Breakfast Club.
Was he? Oh,
He was the guy. He was the guy that had to watch them in the library.
I don't know why I felt like he looked a little different. Okay.
Yeah, that was him. And
okay.
But once you hear him talk, you should be like, yeah, he was the jerk. So he's one of those jerk actors also.
Yeah. This movie's full of them, yeah. So at this point, Holly becomes an ambassador for the rest of the group, and she starts asking for some concessions for the hostages. And we also see that they're using her office as kind of like Hans's headquarters. And earlier in the movie, Holly had put face down on the little desk behind her a picture of her and John and their children.
Right.
So there has not been a connection made between Holly and John at this point, thank goodness.
Right.
And she's very careful not to use her married name.
Right.
And so the press, with Thornburg reporting, start to broadcast the news about the situation at the plaza. And for the first time, Argyle becomes aware of what's happening as he watches the news in the back of the limo. So he's just been chilling eating stuff out the minibar.
People are dying. People getting cars are getting shot up. Chilling.
He's just down in the parking garage, which appears to be under the building, just chilling, talking to people on the phone. He don't know nothing of what's going on. So he learns also that CB communication is the only form of viable communication. And he turns on the limo's CB radio so that he can keep up with what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay, so in this next scene, the chief decides to send in the SWAT team in an attempt to storm the building against Powell's wishes. Because Powell is like, based on like what I know about what McClane has told me.
And I almost got blown away.
Right.
I got big machine guns and they're organized. Right. And this is another 80s thing about action movies. There's always some dumb cop that's trying to be the hero that doesn't know who's going to go in there, guns a-blazing.
Yeah. The chief makes an interesting point because he's saying, like, I don't really believe this intel because these so-called terrorists haven't checked off any of the things on the terrorist checklist. Like, they haven't made any demands. They haven't.
You're a call even.
Right. So he assumes that the info that John is giving him is phony. And so the SWAT team goes in, but the henchmen are really ready. The building is extra locked down. Theo is using security cameras as their eyes, and they assault the mess out of the SWAT team with instruction from Hans to only wound them, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Why did you think he only wanted them wounded?
I guess he still wanted them not to all out retaliate with all kinds of stuff. Maybe, I don't know, maybe, want the cops to overreact. They're killing our guys, maybe. But then when they retaliate with the armored vehicle, and I don't think those people were injured inside there. I think they were dead.
I think so too. I was like, okay, don't kill the SWAT team, but if they come at you with the tank, all bets are off. I'd like,
right. And then he said, hit it again. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. When the police send in that RV, the henchmen rush to like assemble this missile launcher. They destroy the tank.
Right.
And John starts to get a little frantic when Hans requests that they shoot it again.
Now, there's a joke in there that you even said it. I don't know if you caught it. What does RV stand for? Recreational big. Right. But that's not what it was. That was Theo being funny. So it's an armored vehicle.
Okay.
Some people, AV, you'll call it an AV. Some people call it a tank or, in the military terms and stuff like that. But he was being funny when he says RV.
Okay.
And another thing I found funny, this is just funny to me, when they're trying to hurry and get the missile thing together. And so I know I was in Germany, so I know a few words, and Schnell is hurry quick. So they keep yelling at it. And my wife was like, I was yelling that just to yell it while the movie was, Schnell, go, Schnell. And my wife goes, what is wrong with you? I'm like, it's just something in me. I just know this part.
Okay.
And it just tickles me. And then early in the movie, when they were first getting in the building, they're going leaks, Rex, which is left and right. The guy's trying to figure out, I guess they had the building memorized from floor plans, and he's trying to remember where to go. And there's just a few German words I pick up here and there, and those were a couple of them I just got a kick out of just because I knew them. And then I remember them. They just trigger a little something in me occasionally.
Yes, you're like a sleeper agent. So.
I have never yelled Schnell. I have never yelled Schnell to you, Kiara, when we're going somewhere and we're trying to hurry up.
That doesn't ring a bell to me.
I wouldn't yell it at you like that, but I might say Schnell. And Mach Schnell is very fast, I believe. So
yeah, like going Mach 5. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right where to get that from.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I don't remember you saying Schnell to me before. It's not ringing any bells right
Definitely your younger brothers and sisters.
That's probably right. This is interesting. Powell recognizes that he's like 2 steps ahead of the rest of everyone else because of the intel he's got from John. Like he already recognizes, oh, hey, they're shooting out the lights. He's like, these guys are more well equipped than we think they are. You can't just send in a team thinking that you're going to put an end to this. So while this is happening, Argyle actually recognizes that he is trapped inside of the building's garage. He can't leave because all the gates are down and he's a little frantic. I want to know how much gas was in this limo because he basically had the car turned on the whole time.
Yeah. But what a limo is, limos have a larger gas tank, and also he was just idling most of the time. So as long as he wasn't driving, but yeah. I've got a picture of him older, and he looks like not Judge Joe. Who's Judge Joe Brown? Who was the other judge? Other black judge with glasses.
Mathis?
Yes, he looks like him now.
I see the picture on IMDb.
Yeah,
he does. He does.
But yeah, once again, I like how they keep him involved, and don't forget about him.
Right. I read that some of the other kind of B characters got more screen time because Bruce Willis was filming another movie.
Oh.
And so some of the B characters got more developed because, he couldn't be in every scene.
Right.
I'm trying to remember what movie that was.
It might have been a TV show, too, because I want to say that TV show was around that same time, Moonlighting.
Yeah, you're right. It was Moonlighting.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, because it was still on air and doing well. But I think he had to abandon it because his film career took off.
So he wasn't Moonlighting anymore?
Yeah, Moonlighting ending in 89. And I want to say, I don't think it was still doing well. And I think he had to make a choice. Now, the weird thing about Bruce Willis is he had a weird music career. He had like music videos and he was singing. And it was like rock stuff where he wasn't like, he wasn't belting out notes or nothing, but he was like keeping out. And it was just cheesy 80s stuff and cheesy 80s band. It was awful. But
I didn't know he had a music career at all.
Yeah. It was really short and it was really awful. But I just thought it was, a fun time. That's right. Blind Date was before this. That's right. Blind Date is hilarious. It's like a rom-com kind of movie. Mm-hmm. And that's right, he got Moonlighting first. I mean, he had other stuff he had bit parts in, but Moonlighting was 85, and then Blind Date was 87, and this was 88. Yeah, Blind Date. That's worth a watch if you want to have an 80s laugh, and Kim Basinger is in that.
Okay.
And she's crazy in that. It's a funny movie. But I guess you can call it an action comedy, action rom-com. But yeah, worth a watch if
I'm going to check it out. So yeah, at this point, the officers are kind of getting whooped on by the terrorists. So John becomes worried that more officers will be killed or injured. So he steps into action. And so McClane throws some of the C4 that he found down an elevator shaft, which causes an explosion that kills 2 more of the terrorists and ends the, assault between the SWAT team and the terrorists.
Did you think that was a little reckless? Did you think that was a little reckless of him?
I don't think so, because all the hostages were up on a higher floor.
Yeah.
You mean, are you saying like it might have hurt the integrity of the building and caused them to crash?
They all felt
possible.
It. Yeah. I just was like, wow. And C4 is pretty heavy duty, and you saw it shook the whole thing. So I was like, wow, that's a little much. But it did calm everything down, weirdly enough.
Yeah.
It didn't start a fire.
No,
because the building wasn't on fire. Yeah, so I was like, there was a couple of things that could have went really bad.
Yes, I agree.
But
maybe it was pretty reckless. Yeah,
but it was great action, great explosion. It was.
Yeah, and now the police and the press know that what they're dealing with, right? Like, this is not just your ordinary terrorists. Right. But Thornburg is like almost wetting himself from getting the scoop on this story.
Right. Yes.
Really excited by it.
Yeah.
And we learned from the press that Gruber actually was a part of like a weird movement or party in Germany, but he was expelled from it. It's really interesting when you have like a party put out a statement like he's not with us anymore.
Right.
I thought that was pretty funny.
Right. Yeah. So you're too hardcore. You got to go.
Yes.
But evidently, it probably was really him being greedy, wanting, like, let's do something, let's make some money, Right.
And his party was probably more focused on a cause or something political. Right. Yeah.
And maybe he was just too psychotic for them. Who knows?
I didn't find him to be psychotic or unhinged. He just wanted money. I didn't find him to be super crazy. He felt low-key reasonable.
But he was a sociopath, where he shot her boss. Holly's boss, and he was a sociopath, definitely, but unhinged. He couldn't have been too unhinged to be running that operation. Right.
But yeah, there's a funny exchange between John and Deputy Chief Robinson on the radio when John chews him out for like not listening to him.
Right.
And this is where I start to question what Reginald Bell Johnson's character, what his role is. He just comes across as like an emotional support person and maybe like a liaison, but he's not really effective at being a liaison because they're not listening to him.
Yeah. But they're still showing you that the police chief is a jerk and he's not going to listen. But have we mentioned who Reginald Bell Johnson is popular for? We just said it.
Oh, Carl Winslow?
You did mention it. That was pretty cool. Regardless. Yeah. I always thought that was pretty cool. To see him in a different light. Wasn't he a cop on that show too?
He was. Yes.
He was. Yes,
I'm going to talk about that.
Okay.
We'll talk about that a little bit later. But Holly's coworker, Ellis, does a bump and gets some courage.
Right.
Gets some courage to negotiate so he and the other hostages survive. He really thinks John is putting them in danger. So he tries to do this weird sales pitch to Hans Gruber. He also says something a little racist. So
Yeah.
but Ellis claims that he can give John to Gruber, which is a bold statement. I was like,
Right.
where do you get this kind of confidence?
And also, you got to think, not just he's going to get everybody. He just wants to be the hero. And it's probably Holly and wants to show up John for Holly. Mm-hmm. So I think that's part of it too.
But right as Al and John are kind of fool-la-la on the radio, getting to know each other or whatever, Hans interrupts them to announce that he knows exactly who John is and where he works. And when Hans hands over the radio to Ellis, John becomes afraid that Ellis has run his mouth, which would endanger Holly. Mm-hmm. But interestingly enough, Ellis claims that John was his guest and that they go way back. So for now, Holly is safe.
Right.
But when Ellis
I forgot that part. I forgot that he had switched it up. I was like, well, he's just going to tell. And I said, oh, yeah, he doesn't say that. So he's not a total dunce, but still.
But I think his goal was to be like, I have enough social capital with him to get him to give himself up. Or to demonstrate to Hans that, like, I know this guy. I've known him for a long time.
Yeah.
I can convince him to give himself up. But, that was actually good for Holly. But when Ellis fails in convincing John to surrender, Hans kills Ellis very easily, very quickly.
Right.
And personally, I'm not sad. Ellis was annoying.
Right. And you knew it from the beginning, like, something's going to happen to him.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But
John, however, does tip Hans off that he wasn't at the party with Ellis and that he has a different connection to a different hostage in the building. The chief actually feels like John let Ellis die, while Powell thinks that he did all he could to save Ellis. What's your opinion?
Well, I think he just knew, cop dealing with people, knowing a killer when he hears one, that he was going to kill him anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think, I think it's, and if they had to kill somebody, he'd be the first one, like in a negotiation to prove a point. I guess this guy would have been the first one, but he wasn't. We got to remember, John was there when they negotiated with the boss. Remember, he heard all that go down because he was in the next room. And so he knows how Hans operates as far as once you get information, or even if not, he's got a backup plan if I don't need you. So I think he just knew he wasn't going to let that guy survive.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. Well, Powell and the chief get into like a little bit of a power struggle, but just then Hans contacts the police with demands for different terrorist group members around the world to be released. This is obviously a red herring, as we know he's a thief and not a terrorist. So Hans gives him 2 hours to make it happen, and we find out that Theo is only 2 blocks away from cracking the safe. So outside, the FBI arrives. The agents are both named Johnson. That is so funny to me. Like whenever they introduce themselves, Agent Johnson, no relation. And they're obviously a white guy and a black guy, and they're like, it's not related. I just find that to be funny.
And those guys are stock guys from 80s and 90s movies, especially the white guy, the senior guy. I don't know if you notice his face, it's got like bad acne that's, or scar, I don't know what you want to call it, but he's always played some kind of tough guy or bad guy in all kinds of movies from the 80s and 90s. And the black guy, he's been in a couple of things too. But just to face him, I couldn't, not enough for me to pick him out to name a movie, but you've seen them around.
Okay, well, in a lot of shows and movies that involve the police officers, they always draw this stark contrast or this dynamic between the police and the FBI. And depending on the viewpoint of the main characters, it changes. They never get along. The FBI come in and like have a takeover spirit, and they think the police are idiots. But if it's from the police officer's viewpoint, it's like, we know more about this. You all don't know what you're doing. Blah, blah, blah. Like, it always comes up. And I don't know how true to life it is. It's like, why aren't you all collaborating as opposed to this weird.
And I watch police shows, and then when the feds come in, they're going to do it their way. They think they're better. They got more resources. But it's all, like you said, that always seems to be the case.
Yes. But while checking the explosives on the roof, Gruber actually comes across McClane and pretends to be an escaped hostage with an awful American accent. What did you think about him changing his accent?
His accent was pretty bad.
Yeah, I didn't like it.
It was pretty bad. I didn't like it either. But that's a great, and since this movie, that's happened. This movie started the terrorist or the bad guy impersonating just a victim, I think. I don't remember before this, but it's a great little twist. I liked it. I was like, the accent was horrible, but yeah, I liked the idea, but just the accent was, for me, I never did like it.
Well, yeah, McClane and Gruber talk with each other, and I feel like their dialogue is really interesting. It's almost like a cat and mouse if both of them were cats and both of them were mice.
Right.
Something about it also comes across as, I'm not going to say this right, and I don't think I have the right words to verbalize it. Something about it comes across as this weird, almost flirtatious kind of talk, but not in a romantic sense. In like this way of like, I guess, flirting with danger, that kind of sense. Something about it, like the lighting is low, the way they're looking at each other. It's hard to describe. It's like I said, it's cat and mouse would probably be the best way to describe it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But John feels uneasy and he knows something is up, but he decides to give Hans a gun and he's like, hey, use this if we come across some bad guys. Hans basically immediately turns on John. Hans attempts to shoot McClane from behind, but he finds that the weapon is unloaded, obviously, and is saved only by the intervention of the other terrorists who he's called to come and, get him.
Right. Now, part of this makes sense and part of it confused me. He asked the guy his name, and he said, "My name is Bill Clay." And McClane looks on the building roster and see a William Clay. So I'm not sure, did that tip him off or that made him think he was legit?
That is a little confusing to me as well, because they made a point to look at it. I think the problem is that Bill Clay was on the 29th floor and the party was on the 30th. So he was not supposed to be.
So maybe it was another company.
Right.
Right. So we believe that tipped him off.
I think so.
McClane said, he just pulled that off that board right there.
Probably.
Because at first I thought it was real smooth. I said, wow, Hans has memorized all the people's names in this corporation. And if I'll just pull one from my memory. So I was torn. And even when I watch it this time, I'm like, so that was a difference. Okay, I got you. So he just pulled that off of there. And that's what tipped John off. Because I don't know why I thought later in the movie he would say, or at the end of that, he would say, well, you were good, but your act, I thought he revealed what made him know he wasn't who he said he was, but it never happened. So I said, it's been a while since I've seen it.
That was a little bit confusing, because if it is the Nakatomi Plaza, then anyone in the building works for that company probably. So
right. So I don't know.
Still been an employee, just working.
Right. So I was thrown off.
I agree that is pretty unclear.
Right.
So. Yeah, the other terrorists come to rescue Hans, and McClane ends up escaping, but he is injured by the intentionally shattered glass that they shoot out everywhere because he is still shoeless.
And Hans picked that up when he was talking to him as William Clay.
Right.
And so that's an iconic scene that comes up here, yeah.
But unfortunately, he leaves behind the detonators in, all of the hullabaloo and the shooting. At this moment, Thornburg's news team is able to get a lot of intel on John, including where his wife lives, and that comes back later. But Theo has made it through the 6th lock and is waiting for Hans to work his magic to get through the final lock. When John is picking glass out of his foot in a bathroom. Why was this bathroom so nasty? Did you recognize that?
I didn't notice. I didn't think of that.
There was stuff everywhere.
I was too busy. Well, remember part of the building was under construction?
But it wasn't messy like construction. There was newspapers on the floor, paper cups and paper towels, and it just looked messy.
It did, because that was an office floor because of those were cubicles and little glass offices. Yeah, I was too focused on him picking the glass out of his foot. I was too freaked out about it. And Erica was like, every time he ran with bare feet and they showed it, she goes, "Oh, I can't do it. I can't." He's running around barefoot. She couldn't handle it.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, but when John is picking the glass out of his foot, we hear him having a conversation with Al about how Al accidentally shot a 13-year-old boy who had a ray gun, which is too close to home a little bit, but we don't know if the kid died. They don't say, but Al is really remorseful about it, and he can't really find it in himself to pull his gun on anybody anymore. So now he's a desk jockey, as they call him.
Right.
So the FBI at this point orders the power to be shut off to the building, which, as Gruber has anticipated, disables the final vault lock so the team can collect the bonds that they were after.
Right. Which was pretty ingenious. I still, great story how they all folded together and you had a little mystery
Yeah.
of that. And then you had the little backstory with Powell, which was good, which made a little sense on how he was, it made sense on how he was at, he had you can see he was a sergeant. He had sergeant stripes, but you didn't get the sense he was like on the street all the time. So this backed up all of that. And I thought that tied together really well.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty good. But at this point, the tank top has basically melted off and Bruce Willis is totally shirtless. So the tank top is gone. The FBI ends up claiming that they agreed to Gruber's demands for a helicopter, intending to send a gunship helicopters to eliminate the group once they get to the roof. But Hans intends to blow up the roof when the helicopters arrive, which is also a part of the plan.
Yeah. And remember, John goes, why was Hans up here? And he goes back and sees the whole thing wired. And then you get the whole, I love how that's a reveal. Oh, wow, that's what they were doing. Oh, man, they're going to kill all those people, And then you think, well, how are they going to get out of there? And then you find out a little later. So it's pretty good.
Right. So yeah, McClane ends up sending a message to Holly through Pal about how he should have been more supportive when she had her career change and that she's the best thing that's ever happened to him and that he apologizes for being a butt or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so at this point, Thornburg is at Holly's house threatening the maid with deportation if he can't talk to John and Holly's kids. And I was like, this man is awful.
Right. He's really, really real piece of work he was.
Yeah, he's awful. But like you said, McClane realizes that Gruber has plans to blow the roof and kill the hostages and to fake his team's deaths. So Carl, who is enraged by the death of his brother Tony, attacks McClane right as he's about to tell the cops about the explosives on the roof. So he doesn't really get the message out, just that there's a double cross and they don't know what that means. So John and Carl end up fighting. And while that's happening, Hans sees the newscast showing Holly and John's daughter asking for her parents to come home. And now Hans realizes that Holly is John's wife and she's now a bargaining chip.
Right. And Holly sees this too.
Yes, Holly does see it as well. Yeah. Everyone sees it because it's on a TV in the office. So the hostages end up getting taken to the roof while Gruber keeps Holly with him. Somehow her shirt eventually kind of pops open, which is ridiculous. I don't know if you noticed that.
I didn't notice. Oh, we did have our gratuitous 80s nudity when they first got there. And a guy and a girl went out office. And they always, I said, in the 80s, you always had, if it's rated R, it's going to be rated R anyway. Let's put some boobs in it.
Yeah. There was also a poster that was up in a nude poster or a topless poster.
But that also was also for like a Hansel and Gretel thing for him almost. I mean, he went out a different way when he was coming back and he was, where am I at? Oh, nude poster. And he touched it like, he goes, okay, good. Thanks, girl. Or whatever. He says something or he acknowledges it. And I think that's what it was really there for. He knew, okay, this is where I'm at. Okay, I can go this way. Yeah. So, but 80s movies, as a young man, I didn't hate it, but they always said, you're going to get some boobs.
Yep. Yep. I see that. So Carl ends up shooting John in the shoulder, which I did not remember. But after a really intense struggle, Carl is seemingly killed by being hanged with some chains in, I don't know, like a stairwell or something leading.
Yeah, I like that kill scene. That was pretty creative.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty good too.
But it was like a pulley system. So you can pull stuff up to the next level. And he just, it was a little weird that they were fighting going up the stairs. So I was like, I was like, that was a little weird. But then, okay, so we had to get to the change and get up high. Okay.
Yeah. But McClane ends up going back to the roof and driving the hostages from the roof using a gun. Unfortunately, that kind of makes the people in the helicopters think that he's one of the terrorists.
Right.
Because he is during terrorist things. So I don't know what he expected. But the hostages leave the roof and head back downstairs to safety. And the helicopter is circling him, trying to get him. And now this is the point where I'm like, something's off because the FBI, why were Johnson and Johnson in the helicopter? How did they get to the helicopter? Because they were on the scene downstairs ordering for the gunships to come.
Right. I guess
next time we see them, they're in the helicopter.
Yeah, they did. The little continuity there was a little, I guess they went to it to come, and he had like a sniper rifle and he put his hat backwards and he was trying to show that he was a sniper and he was going to take a shot. There was gunships the gunships, it's got a machine gun, but that's not precise. So it looked like he was going to be the sniper if they needed it for somebody to do some precise shooting from a helicopter, which is pretty impossible anyway. But anyway.
Speaking of precision, they were saying that they would be fine losing 20 to 25% of the hostages.
Yeah, right. That was awful. I was like, ooh.
To take out the terrorists.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, these FBI guys are very unlikable.
Right.
Tons of unlikable people in this movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, at this point, John sees the helicopter and knows they're probably going to be after him. So he uses the fire hose on the roof to escape. And he almost dies.
Fantastic stunt scene. That's classic. Yeah.
The roof is detonated and the helicopter is destroyed, killing both of the Johnsons.
Right.
And John almost dies when the thing that's holding the hose to the roof falls.
The wheel. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so he's able to break through the glass to get on one of the floors, but then when the little wheel falls, it's really heavy and almost drags him out of the building.
And it's a little comical. So so you get that. But that's one of the greatest stunt scenes. I don't know how they did that. That was pretty cool. That's probably my favorite scene, my favorite stunt in the whole movie. I love that.
Nice. Well, more things blow up in the building, kind of unexplainably. I was like, what's happening?
I was going to mention that. Did you like the explosions in this movie?
Oh, I thought they were fantastic.
Fantastic.
I thought they were
no CGI.
Really good.
Yeah, there was all contemporary type done stuff, and they were pretty cool.
Yeah, I think the elevator shaft bomb, I really liked that one, how it came back.
Oh, yeah, and he was like, oh, yeah, another.
Yeah.
And he makes comedy out of action, but without, you didn't always need a one-liner or some dialogue. His expressions and his physical acting is great.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, meanwhile, Theo goes downstairs to the parking garage, to retrieve an escape vehicle, which is actually an ambulance that was loaded into the back of a larger truck.
Which more planning, which an ambulance won't look suspicious. Right. And they still couldn't have got all them hostages in there. Not hostages, the henchmen in there.
They were already planning to lose a few of them.
I guess, right? I guess. Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. Okay, so while Theo is trying to retrieve this escape vehicle, Argyle, who is in the parking garage, sees this, and he actually crashes the limo into the ambulance and knocks Theo out.
Little black on black crime.
Yeah.
The two black guys in the movie got to fight, really? No, I'm messing with you.
Yeah.
Nah, but yeah.
Yeah.
And that was a good tie together with that guy, because we thought he was going to, and I was like, something's got to happen to the guy. I don't like him. So.
Yeah, he was just annoying, because there were certain parts in the movie where he was kind of, when the SWAT team came and he was being the eyes for the team using the security cameras, some of the things that he was saying were just annoying. And
boom, sack the quarterback or something. I'm like, you cornball.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, it was awful.
Yeah.
But at this point in the movie, a weary and battered McClane finds Holly with Gruber and his remaining henchmen. John is pissed off that he realizes that this was all about money, because he sees some of the bearer bonds, right? It's a little more than $600 million in bearer bonds. And if you adjust that for inflation, it's about $1.5 billion today.
It was a lot of money. Now, speaking of the heist, we got Alan Rickman has a great line, and he kind of glosses over it and cuts himself off. It was such a great line. When Holly's in there in the office and she realizes they're robbing the place, and she goes, "You're nothing more than a common thief." And he runs up there and puts his face in hers and says, "I'm an exceptional thief." You didn't hear that? Yeah. That was a fantastic line. That was one of my favorite lines in the movie. And he says something right after where if he had just said, "I'm an exceptional thief," it really would have landed. But then he says something right after it to the effect of, "And I'm going to get what I want," or something. But love that line.
Yeah, that was a good scene, because he kind of almost crawls over to her.
Right. Yeah. So,
yeah, it was actually a little freaky. Yeah. But yeah, McClane ends up surrendering to Gruber and is about to be shot when Han says, "Yippee-ki-yay, MFer." That was so funny. He sounded so bad.
Right. Motherfucker. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry you have to believe that.
It's so funny to me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but the accent is, because he's British doing a German accent, but then he's trying to sound American and making that sound. It was funny.
And it's like a Russian doll of accents.
Right. It's all mixed together. Yeah.
Yes. But just as Hans is about to shoot McClane grabs his concealed service pistol, which is taped to his back, and uses his last two bullets to wound Gruber and kill his accomplice.
Now, you remember the scene before, he was in the bathroom and they show him look at the tape because he taped it to his back. There was a roll of
Yes,
tape or there
that's
was a
right.
thing of tape. And then, yeah. So they kind of show it to you and you're like, again, great.
What was this
Right.
about?
Why are they showing us tape? And then you don't see it right away when they're talking. And then
Right.
you kind of see it when his hands are in the air. And I'm like, what is that? It took me a while. I remember when I first watched it, what is on his back? Cool scene. Really cool.
Yeah. Okay, here's another thing. I don't know much about guns. For whatever reason, I thought the bullets, the last two bullets he had, because there was a point where he
does take it out.
was in the area and he takes two bullets out of a gun, but the gun he had in his hand was one of the big ones. I feel like the gun that he took the two bullets out of were from the magazine of one of the larger guns.
I don't remember.
But when he shoots Hans,
It's a pistol.
it's a handgun. It's a pistol.
Yeah.
And I was like, those bullets aren't the same.
Now, some of them might be interchangeable. If it's a 9mm, I'm not that familiar with guns where it could be. Some machine guns, the pipe are shoot 9mm. So, and most likely the handgun was 9mm. So maybe, but I don't remember him switching, if that was, I don't really remember there's two bullets left. I remember him looking at magazines throughout, be like, oh, how many bullets I got left? But I'm not sure. Good question.
Yeah, I don't know. But anyways, he grabs his service pistol and he shoots Gruber. Gruber kind of falls backwards through a window, but instead of just falling to his death, he's actually still holding on to Holly, and he's holding on to her wrist where her Rolex is.
And I really didn't realize the significance of that until I just watched it this time. I said, okay, this is, the Rolex was brought up earlier and it, it's kind of something you notice later.
Yeah. But McClane ends up unclasping the watch and Gruber falls to his death. His expression is very
Priceless.
Yeah. But he, falls to his death there on 31st-ish floor. So about 30 stories, which is about 300 feet to his death.
Yeah, that's a classic. That's classic from the movie. His face and the falling backwards.
Yeah.
And now I also noted that when they show him a body falling from the people on the ground watching, you can tell that's a real stuntman. The way it's not a dummy, it's not CGI. And I was like, wow, stuntman had to do that. That was amazing to me. I was like, and I want to say I watched the making of this or something, and they made it a point that stuntman so-and-so and what they had to do and this and that, it was really involved. And I was like, that was pretty cool. Even though,
Oh, nice. I didn't pay attention to that, but it makes sense. Yeah.
but the bad part of it, though, when he's facing, he's falling backwards, you can see the screen behind him is a screen, That was kind of bad. That was bad. I mean, CGI would have, that one place CGI would have been better than, I don't know what they called back then, a green screen or a drop screen. I don't know what they called them, but.
Yeah. But yeah, once Gruber falls to his death, John and Holly make out feverishly. It's weird. He probably smells awful. He is covered in dirt. But we see the kind of aftermath outside of the building, right? The building has been blown up multiple times in multiple locations. There's dead people falling from the sky.
The bearer bonds are falling. Did you notice the bearer bonds are falling everywhere?
I saw it was paper, but I couldn't make out if it was bearer bonds or not. It just looked like paper to me. It looked blank.
Because the vault was upstairs, right? And they blew up. Remember you said these things were blowing up? I'm thinking, it seemed to me that that's what, they had it on a cart or something. Remember they were putting it on a cart. I think somehow that, I really don't understand how they got out there, but I assume that's what they were.
I thought it would be too, but when I took a look at some of the papers that were falling, they were just blank. And I was like, this is an office. They have paper, I don't know. I couldn't make out if it was the actual bearer bonds or not. But yeah, there is stuff falling from the sky at this point. There's emergency vehicles and news people and, it's very crowded down at the bottom. And so Holly and John, meet up outside and John comes across. This is what I'm talking about. In this movie, there are these weird moments, whether it's between Hans and John or John and Al, that almost feel romantic, but in like a platonic way. There's a moment where they show Reginald VelJohnson looking at John before he comes to introduce himself. And it's almost like seeing the person you love in a crowd. Like,
I never got that. I just saw the connection between two cops that been through a harrowing thing together. And isn't it, this is kind of strange that you mentioned that. I think, isn't it Reginald VelJohnson gay in real life? Am I wrong? I think so.
I think so.
I don't know.
But it just felt, just the way the scene was shot, it just came across as if, like in a movie when a husband comes to see if his wife has survived, a thing, or vice versa, whatever. The way it was shot, it was like these scenes feel romantic sometimes. I don't know how to describe it. I just thought it was freaking hilarious. But he connects with Al and they hug like they're old friends. And I'm like, how much did Al really do besides just talking to
He drove that car and almost died, almost killed himself. But yeah. But I also guess he kept them informed, and that helped them with some stuff. I thought he did enough. But for them to, maybe the book was a little more involved or something. Maybe had a little more conversations.
Maybe. I don't know how effective Al was like on the ground because they didn't really listen to him. I think he just came across as like emotional support, I guess,
for John. Yeah.
For John. And I feel like, I guess that's okay. Just something about their relationship I do think is missing. So maybe there is more in the book. But anyways, when Holly introduces herself to Al, she actually uses her married name, Holly McClane. So, you rescue me and we're back married.
There's hope.
Yes. Yeah. So Chief Deputy Robinson, this is the absolute worst time to do this, accosts John saying, you destroyed property and you got Ellis killed. But right then, Carl takes off a cloak or something and ambushes McClane and Holly, and he ends up getting shot dead by Pal. So he was effective.
Yeah, in the end, yeah. So I think he was on a stretcher and they would covered him up. Maybe they thought he was dead.
No, he was upright.
Was it? I don't know why.
He had some type of cloak over him to hide that he had that big gun.
Okay. He was upright. I don't know why I thought they were escorting him out as an injured person. Okay.
Somehow he got down from being hanged and came out and got ready to shoot. Everybody dropped to the ground except for Powell. Powell killed him, and he's no longer trigger shy, apparently. So when Thornburg approaches Holly, she punches him in the face.
Hilarious.
As she should, for interviewing her kids without her permission, putting her life in danger. So he gets his just desserts. And just then, Argyle crashes through the parking garage door in the limo and drives McClane and Holly away together. Yeah. And happily ever after, I guess.
A pretty good ending. And you got to have the one bad guy that, I wonder how that probably was for the movie, I would think. That probably wouldn't have the book how that went down. I don't know. I'm really I'd like to find this book and read it.
Yeah. I think it'd be interesting. Well, that's the end of the movie, y'all. And at the end of every review, we ask the questions. Is it worth a rewatch? If the movie holds up. But this time around, we have an additional question to ask. Is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Dad, what do you think?
Worth a rewatch? Definitely. I mean, I could rewatch it probably every 5 years and be like, oh, this is fun watch. It's probably the last time I've seen it, probably at least 5 years ago. And I've probably seen it at least twice a decade since it came out. And even after I got out the Army, and you wouldn't just run across it in somebody's room or somebody playing it. But I think it's definitely worth a rewatch. What do you think about the rewatch part?
For sure.
Yeah.
I actually enjoyed it. Like I said, I watched it last year and I watched it this year as well. And I was like, this is great. The story really flows. I think even with the fact that it's 35 years old, I don't think it's aged poorly.
Really. The action is good. The temporary explosions and the stunts, the look. It has a look to it. And I don't know if it's this director, but it has a look to it. It's got an LA feel to it and done really well. And I wonder if that it helps that it was all in one place, maybe. So that was pretty good.
Yeah. So you agree that the movie holds up?
I think it holds up, definitely. Definitely holds up. Yeah. The fact that people don't have cell phones, that helped, that they can call for help. So that works. So it holds up. And it's not too much problematic stuff in it. I mean, the 80s tropes of commercialism and, excess and bring down a corporation. I think there was a couple of messages in there, but greed being one of them. But it holds up.
Yeah, I think so too. What about it being a Christmas movie? What do you think about that?
It is, because the music in it helped it. And then I just watched it last night, which is this is late November, and it feels Christmassy. It's action, but it's weird. You just know it's Christmas, and they make it a point. And then you've got the ho 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 on the sweater, and they don't bring it up too much later. But even being the fact that he was headed home for Christmas Eve, I consider it a Christmas movie. I don't think most people would in traditional sense, but that's a good time to watch it. What do you think?
Okay. So for me, like I said, I definitely think the movie is worth a rewatch. Definitely feel like it holds up today. As far as it being a Christmas movie, I'm going to say no. Personally, a lot of times I like to think of things in the movie as like additional characters. For instance, like if a storm happens, I feel like that's like an additional character in the movie. In this film, it being Christmas is just like an additional character or just like a setting in this movie. It's not central to the story.
Right.
I think the only real purpose it serves is to explain why there aren't very many people in the building at this time.
Okay.
Because it's just a Christmas party.
Right.
And it may help explain why he's come back to visit his family during this time of year.
Okay.
But it's not central to the story. So like Home Alone, it being Christmas is central to Home Alone or A Christmas Story or, you know, other common kind of Christmas movies. This movie could have taken place any time of the year. It could have been a 4th of July picnic that they had. The movie came out in July, so it wasn't intended to be a Christmas movie. And it could have been any other holiday. It could have been like a little Thanksgiving party that they had. To me, because it's not central to the story, it's just like a little element that helps explain a few things. It could have been New Year's. Like they could have been having a New Year's Eve party. It could have been any other time. Yeah. It still would explain why he would come to visit family, you know, during New Year's. It would explain why there weren't very many people in the building. I think you could set this around any other holiday and it would be just as impactful.
And what makes me think it, because when they replay it, it's around Christmas too. So they kind of force it on you. When it would come on TV, it would come on at Christmas time. Somewhere in there. So that's the one reason it feels like it to me. Just the time frame. Watching it for itself, not at Christmas, but the time I see it, I relate it to Christmas time. Yeah.
I feel like it's associated, but I don't find it to be a Christmas movie. I can watch it
I agree with that.
Any time of the year. But I feel like the cadence of the story, the characters are solid and kind of well-rounded for the most part. We understand their motivations. It's like a really good action film that allows a number of the B characters to still shine. So we get to see Argyle and Powell quite a bit and learn more about them. Less so about Argyle. But Bruce Willis does a great job bringing this character to life in a way that's like still cool and funny without it being corny. I really enjoyed rewatching it. And I also found that like the people of color in this film weren't monoliths, but they still kind of fell into some stereotypes. So for instance, law enforcement is often used as an acceptable career for Black men. Carl Winslow was also a police officer, as you pointed out. If you remember in the Terminator movie, the first Terminator, that the cop was a Black man as well. If you pay attention to a lot of these movies that involve law enforcement or even the military, there are tons of Black men. We got Bubba from Forrest Gump. Like there's a lot of examples of Black men being in those types of roles, either in the military or in law enforcement. So it's a little bit of a trope, but it's not necessarily negative.
It's not. I don't think it is, because it's kind of true. There's Black people everywhere doing stuff, but they're getting work and they're in there. As long as they do a good job and I believe them, it's however you want to put them in there. That's cool with me.
Yeah. Well, they also have the young hip hop loving Black guy. That's like a little on the nose.
Yeah, that was and that was an 80s thing. That was So
but like I said, they did also have Theo, who was a criminal, but a smart one.
Right. So they had the two different, they had different guys, and then they had the FBI guy.
Yes.
As I looked it up in the thing, it called him Little Johnson. And the other guy's Big Johnson. That's weird. But yeah. And the Asian guy, how did he get killed? Did he shot him?
I think he got blown up in the C4 thing.
Okay. And I was so happy. Every other movie I've seen of him, he comes in doing some karate stuff. And when I first saw him in this, I was like, oh man, they're going to just use this one Asian guy. He's going to come and start flying high kicks and doing karate. But he didn't. I was like, okay, that's good. He was the guy eating a candy bar. He had a little comment. Remember, he was the one getting a candy bar.
He was eyeballing that candy bar.
He was like, oh yeah, let me get some of that. But it's one of the funnier comedies. There's another quick scene where John does something and the hostages see it and Holly goes, that's got to be John. Only John McClane can make you that mad.
Right.
That's pretty good. That's a good line.
Yeah. Oh, I also want to point out that Hans Gruber is an excellent villain. Who was playing the long game. He manages to still be like frightening and like come across as like a little bit of a sociopath, but also still kind of has his wits about him. Right. Like he is still very smart. Yes. Right. And you can tell he's very smart. He's like brilliant enough to pull off this kind of complex plan that has a lot of moving parts and that like heavily relies on certain things. And that's why he had to pick terrorism, because the FBI were going to cut off the power to the building. And it's like, that's the long game. Like you have to play chess to be, to be on his level.
That's probably one of the top 5 villains of all time in movies, I would say. Movies I've seen. He's very quotable, very calculating, and he talking about long game. That money, like he told them, he goes, "We're going to be sitting on the beach somewhere, you know, and don't never have, never have to work again, basically." So fantastic.
And he was saying, you know, the only way to get away with this amount of money is to make sure they think we're already dead.
Yeah.
So like I said, he was playing the long game, and while he was brilliant enough to pull off this complex plan, there's really something to be said by the fact that he was kind of foiled by this kind of simple, you know, average
Joe. Yeah.
So that's part of the whole thing, like the stark contrast between like these corporate people and what they do and how out of place John felt, but he was in the right place to rescue everyone from, you know, that situation.
And this is a kind of a theme throughout the franchise, because the second one was okay, but the third one was really good. And
that had Samuel Jackson.
Right. And remember the nickname in the third one they would call him? The Good Samaritan.
Okay.
So it was, you know, like everyday Joe, you know, foiling the bad guys. And that's a theme they fed on through the whole franchise.
Yeah.
So.
I actually really liked the second one too.
The second one was pretty good. I just didn't like, what's his name, being a bad guy. James from Good Times.
Oh, the guy who does...
John Amos. Wasn't he a bad guy?
James from Good Times.
Yes, he was.
Was he a bad guy?
I think so. And that bothered me. I remember that. He was part of...
Why don't I remember that?
He was in it, and I want to say he was part of the bad guys. I haven't seen it in a while.
I always really liked the little black guy who was helping him, like the air traffic controller guy.
Yeah, but the second one was okay, but I really enjoyed the third one. But what I noticed, the director comes back for the third. He wasn't the second director, but it's part 2. He did part 3 and maybe part 4. But great, launch a great franchise. And Bruce Willis has got some roles that I know you love him. Fifth Element. Fifth Element grew on me. It was good. He's plays a hitman the whole 9 yards. Awesome. That movie took me by surprise. That's pretty good. Sixth Sense, he played a different kind of guy.
That's
true. Most recent Looper was really good. He had some bad roles in there also in between, but Bruce Willis was good. He's stable. I'm hearing awful things about him now. He's got dementia. He can't speak. Something about he's out here. He's really in a bad way right now. Yeah, he's definitely a leading man in the action field that everybody should go and check out some of his movies.
Yeah, he's a national treasure.
Yeah.
As a really good action star. But I like that the movie has a feel-good ending. Like, everything ends well. There were a number of twists and turns that we weren't expecting. Yeah. When I first watched the movie, I was, like, a little shocked that about the power outage thing. I was like, oh, that's super smart. Right. And there's lots of explosions. You know, it has lots of action, and the story carries through the entire time, and basically everything makes sense. Right. So it's super well done, and I completely understand the hype, and I am a fan of this movie.
Definitely.
So the critics at Rotten Tomatoes gave Die Hard a 94%, and the audience did the same. What do you think about that rating?
Definitely, when it came out, that rating fits. I mean, to know the hype that nobody knew anything about it, and then once it came out, people were like, "You got to go see this. You got to. You got to check it out. The action is great. The story's great. You got this villain and a cop. Everybody, for that impact, yes, the rating goes great, and even no doubt, a great rating." Yeah,
I agree. I think they're right on point with this. Oftentimes I find Rotten Tomatoes is tripping, but but I think they're right on the target this time. Yeah. Well, all right, y'all. That is all for today, Home Slices. Thank you so much for listening to the Die Hard movie review featuring my dad. Did you rewatch Die Hard recently? Does it still hold up for you? Is it a Christmas movie? Share your thoughts with us on social media, on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. We want to hear from you. I want to say a super special thanks to my dad for being here today to share his thoughts on this classic action film. Say bye, Dad.
Bye, guys. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Join us next week when I review Harry Potter and the Sorcerer/Philosopher's Stone, featuring a special guest. You don't want to miss it. Peace out.
Peace.
Thanks for listening to Sup Media Reviews. I hope you enjoyed our trip down memory lane just as much as I did. If you have any suggestions for movies or TV shows you'd like me to review next, or if you just want to share your thoughts on today's episode, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Pinterest at Sup Media Reviews, and on supmediareviews.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you have a moment, please leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps me improve the show and spread the word to new listeners. So until next time, peace out, home slices.